First week was crazy. You're a brand new missionary. You do not know how to speak Spanish in this case. And basically the mission president, or my mission president, didn't speak any English. He spoke like a tiny bit where he could be like, do you want to do this? Are you okay with this type thing? But he didn't know much, so we were kind of acting things out, which was fun. You got to learn how to describe things in new ways. And then once you got there, it's like 106 degrees all year round. And so it was like a wave of heat that rushed over you. And it was hot all the time. And in the mission that we were, we had to fly to our next area because it was so big. And so we stayed in the mission home for the first week to go through training and learn all the rules. And that was really cool because you got to know the mission president and his wife, and you're able to meet some of the other missionaries that were in the office, and you just kind of got to know the culture, being in like this you're okay setting. You're not out talking to random people on the streets quite yet. So that was nice to learn the culture before you got out and served everyone. So it was loads of fun to just hang out, and we ate a lot of weird food that first week. They would take us to restaurants, and we would, like, the first thing I ever tried was intestines. Is that what it's called? Cow intestines. And it was interesting. It made me sick for a week, but it was good. It was like, so that was the first thing, and it was weird. Then after, it was totally fine, but yeah. So Santa Cruz North is just like a little part of Santa Cruz where the mission home is and everything, and then the next area is an hour plane ride away, and then the next area is another hour plane ride. And so it's quite a big area, but there's not in between cities. Like, there's just Santa Cruz and then the next one and then the next one. There's nothing in between. And then each city that you go to is pretty small. There's about 4 areas in the city. And the church is growing. I was like, we definitely had a lot of baptisms and growth. But as a whole, they kind of, after a while, they have less active members, more than converts you're teaching. We taught more less active members because the church was kind of taken away from that part of the world for a little bit because of the government. And so a lot of members were not able to go to church. And so it was their stories about how coming back to church and getting back on their feet, I guess, after that big gap of nothing for a while. So there was one member that was telling us about it. She's about, I think, in her 60s, and she said when she was a teenager, well, not a teenager, when she was like in her late 20s, they kind of stopped for a good like 10, 15 years of just, she couldn't go to church, and there wasn't anyone in her city that they were going to church either. And so it had been a while since, but just the older members were the ones that would told us about it. So that's why she said that there was a lot more less active, because they didn't teach their families. And then we would get them and get their families baptized with them and stuff. So in the city that we were in, there was 3 stake buildings or meetings, and then I believe it was 2 stakes. And then there was 1 district, and there was quite a few members with everything, and the culture is mostly Catholic though, so a lot of members would still do a lot of the same culture that Catholics do. And so it was hard to break their like traditions of their family, basically. But if they knew it was true, that they would. But most people, when you knocked on the door, they would know a lot about the Bible, but not a lot of Book of Mormon. So you had to teach them that there's more than just the Bible type stuff. So know your Bible before you go there, honestly, because I sure didn't. And so it was fun to learn from them and them learn from us. That's kind of how we taught them, was you can teach us something from the Bible and we'll teach you something from the Book of Mormon. Yeah, so I served in 2015 and a little bit of 2016. And there was, in the ward that I was in, it was pretty small. And we were in Trinidad. And there was a good amount. There's, say, like 40 members or more each week. But we did it opposite, so you went to Relief Society first and then Sacrament was last. And so you wouldn't get very many women come to Relief Society, but then you would get most of them to come to Sacrament just because it was later in the day. So, but Relief Society, there was like maybe 5 of us every week. In Santa Cruz, it's basically like any other city. It's a really, really big city. But our mission was only half of the city. And in that half, it was the most run-down part of the city. And so there was like more concrete homes, dirt floors. They lived out in basically the sticks of the city, I should say. And we lived in the actual city. And so we would have to walk out to the sticks and go to those homes, and they were a lot more on top of each other. So it was kind of like, they call it like a concrete jungle type thing. And it was hot all the time, so there wasn't no need for windows or a lot of shelter, so it was very open when you went into a home. So there wasn't windows like ours, like glass and stuff. And so when it would rain, the water would come in and they'd basically shovel it out with like buckets and stuff like that. And then it would rain more in Santa Cruz, and it was always windy. And I don't know why it was, but it was windy all the time, and your skirts would fly up, and we'd have to do that. But most people worked in government things or sold things on the street. And like most people did, they would make something and then sell it, food-wise or clothing-wise, shoes, some members did. And then every house had a gate to it, so you'd have to knock on the gate before you were able to enter the actual home. And that was always hard tracking and stuff, because some people didn't hear you or they ignored you when they heard you, and it wasn't easy to see somebody coming up and stuff. And then on P days, we would mostly play soccer, because there's not a ton to do in the city, or things we were allowed to do in the city. Or we would go find a new restaurant to try or something, because there was a lot of different restaurants that you could try, and members would invite you over and try new dishes, and we would like go learn how to make a dish or with the elders or something, or we would teach them an American dish. It was always fun to do on P Day. And then we would email our families in internet cafes. So you would go to a store or something, and they would have cafes with just computers everywhere. And you would pay to use the computer, and then email for an hour and call it good. And then their stores there aren't like our grocery stores. It's basically like little shops, and then you would go to the shop and they would cut your meat in front of you, and they'd have chickens right there laying eggs and just give the eggs to you. Or they would have cereal all up and down their walls. And it was always cram-packed as well. So in the street, you would always bump into somebody because the streets were so busy. The transportation mostly was buses. And the buses were always fun because you would just hop on. They wouldn't really like stop completely. You'd just have to grab on and hop in. Then you would just jump off. And it was always cram-packed. So most of the time you were just hanging on a rod on the outside and stuff. So that was always fun. I was there the longest, so we lived in the middle of the city, and there's a lot of like stores around our houses and stuff, and grocery stores. And then we would walk to our area, which was more of the rural part. Again, it was the outskirts mostly. And here, their houses, every house was completely dirt floors. Some of them were concrete and had like their rooms tiled and stuff. But most members had wood, like posts, and then tarps as their walls, and they would have dirt floors, and it was a lot more third world country, so their water was just a big tank of rainwater that they would get out and then boil and drink and stuff. And then the inner city was more, I guess, wealthy, and they were able to have tile and clean water more out of jugs and stuff, which we had both in our area. And then the worst thing was the sewers that they had were open sewers, so they were kind of like rain gutters there, and it smelled all the time. I was like, you had to get used to the smell. After a while you would, but yeah, I was like, that's probably why they got sick so often. And there we got sick a lot just because of the way the food was prepared, and you had to kind of get your stomach used to the food when you got there, because a lot of members didn't have much, and so when you would go eat with them, it was what they prepared was what you ate, which was good sometimes. And then it rained a lot. Like, we had a lot of monsoons where the water would go up to our waists, and we would just walk along. It was like swimming in the streets, but it was so much fun. And it was windy a lot there as well, or it would be the polar opposite and be really, 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 really hot. Like 100, I think the highest it got was 109 one day when we were there, and that day you just have to keep cold water on you. And then our area was pretty big, because there was only, I think, 4 areas there, and so we would walk about 2-3 miles a day to one side to the other. And the church was in our area, and it was kind of on the outskirts, and churches there are kind of, they have gates all the way around them, and you have to have keys to get in and stuff, just like their homes. You still have to have the gate before you enter the actual home. And most people there did, like, they made their own things and sold them. Or some people would cook for restaurants and then take the food over. There was also little stores like jewelry shops that they had made, or they would have little stores where you could come up like a drive-through type thing and just get bottles of water or like food. Their go-to thing was smoothies. They liked smoothies a lot, so they would have those at shops that you could just come and grab. And then they would have bread with them, so those were always fun to stop by and get a snack on the way to the next member's house. And then the people there were really nice. They were very perceptive with the gospel, and they would always invite you in, and if they didn't, they would at least talk to you for a little bit. And they were never rude about closing the door on your face like they were in the city. And it was a lot nicer community. One thing that I did love is they would, like, eating was their thing. So they would make, every time you would come over, they would have some sort of snack or some new thing for you to try, because they loved baking and they loved making anything. And so they would have you sit down at a lesson, and you couldn't start the lesson quite yet. You had to try their new thing and talk to them about their life, and you basically had to make it like a party type thing. And they would always, if we were teaching one member of their family, they would start out with their whole family there, and then you would talk for a little while, and then they would excuse their family so they could listen to the lesson, which I thought was awesome, because then we got to know the whole family, not just them. And then their culture is Cochabamba is more of their thing, or they call it Kamba. And a lot of women wear skirts, and they sell things on the street, and they have a different way of speaking in Kamba. It's like more of their, slang, I should say. So some of their words are different than most Spanish speakers. So you got to learn their slang words from that. And there wasn't a lot of things that was different from us. They did have quite a few different holidays. One of them was nobody could drive one day. So one day out of the year, no one could drive or use any transportation. You had to walk everywhere you went, and they had parades that would go and just to celebrate the government there, I guess. But it was always interesting because it fell on a Sunday when we were there, and so members couldn't drive to church. They had to walk, and so it was interesting to see the whole city just walking on the streets instead of driving around and stuff. So that was a big culture thing. And then for the most part, the only thing that you couldn't do is slurp your soup. That's one thing that members got mad at me for doing, is slurping the soup. They didn't think that was nice or anything. You also, when you entered a home, you had to, most women wanted you to kiss them on the cheek or give them a hug, some type of affection. And then the men always shook your hand, because obviously we can't hug them, but the elders would hug them and kiss them on the cheek as well. And then same with their children. We would do the same for their children, kiss them on the cheek, or they would run up and hug us. And same goes for when you go to church. That's how they said hello and everything. Their food was basically rice and chicken. That was their go-to thing for everything. Some members would spice it up, and some would make it sweet, but that was mostly what you had every day. They liked fried chicken. That was their favorite. And then we would also have things like liver, or we'd also have chicken feet, which was an interesting one. There's not a lot of meat on it. And then they would also do a lot of fish. And the coolest fish that we had was piranha. And I guess that's a normal thing in Bolivia. It's easier to catch than fish. And so they would do piranha a lot, and it was way good. It tastes the same as fish. But they would do a lot of soups. Their favorite one is peanut soup, basically. And so they would take peanuts and cook them in water, and that was the soup part. And then they would add creamy stuff to it. I'm not sure what they added, but it tasted good. And then they also like fries a lot. They make them a little bit different, but they're just as good. And then, like I was saying, they love smoothies, and they have amazing fruit there. And their favorite was mango smoothies. They would make mango drinks and mango smoothies and mango pies and everything, because that is what they grew the most there. So you had mango in every type of food you could think of, basically. And we also had alligator, which is really good. It tastes like chicken, just juicier. And they would have a lot of bread. That's what you could get at side stores. They would make them sweet, or they would make them like sourdough bread, or just plain. Our favorite was the sweet bread, because they would add caramel flavoring in the middle to make it really good. And then for dessert, they had arroz con leche, which is like rice milk, but they use sweetened condensed milk, so it makes it a lot sweeter. And they had some pastries, but not a lot. They weren't big into sweets. And their chocolate was not very good. It's like, it was very different from our chocolate, and they didn't have a lot of it. But when we did get it, members went crazy for it, or when our families would send it, they go crazy for it as well. And my favorite thing was they would put water in plastic bags, and same with soda or anything, and so it was fun to get that just for the plastic bag experience. And they did this because they could get money back for the bottles, and so they would give you a plastic bag and then take the bottles back and refill them or get money for them and stuff. So that was always cool to see. Like what I was saying there, slang they use a lot is like they say no I, and they like move their hand when there's no one there, or when the person you're asking for is not present at the moment or doesn't want to talk. They would say no I, like they're not here. And then they would say like allá, means like over there, far away. And then they would just have more of, some would have a thicker accent, if it makes sense. So they would speak really, really fast, and they would have this thick accent, so it was hard to understand. And then the children, it was a lot easier to understand because they didn't have that thick accent. But there wasn't really, off the top of my head, that I can think of, but those were the funnest, like allá and no I, and instead of like asking you how you were, they would be like ¿qué pasa?, like what's up type thing in English, and we would answer in normal Spanish because I didn't know. But that was more of the thing, is like ¿qué pasa? With clothing, I would definitely say don't get like full skirts because it is windy there. Like I said before, they do fly up a lot, so just get more straight skirts. You can wear pants there now, so I would wear pants when it gets dark because there are a lot of mosquitoes, and you do get sick from mosquitoes, so always wear repellent, because we had some companions get really sick because of mosquito bites, so it's always better to just wear it even though it smells weird. And with health, I would just say take vitamins because you don't get as much nutrients from the food as you do here, and so I had a lot of stomach issues because of it and stuff. So it's easier just to take a vitamin than have to go to the doctor or anything. For safety, since it is normal for them to kiss you on the cheek and hug you or anything, we usually stepped back from the men and explained our situation before we greeted them, just because there was a lot of moments where they did try to go in for that kiss or the hug, and it's always really awkward when you had to after explain. So we just kind of stepped back and then explained and then greeted them. And then for safety as well, always stay with your companion, obviously. But we had, natives as our companions all the time because of the catcalling that does happen. And we did have people follow us, but you just had to know when to go into a store where more people were, or to call another companionship to come join you. Or we also got rides from the members a lot more than we took taxis or anything like that, just because of the safety. With packing, don't pack a ton. I was like, for most of my mission I wore like 3 skirts, 3 shirts, and it lasted the whole time. And with shoes, get good walking shoes because you'll be walking a lot. And also, you wouldn't think that it does get cold, but your body gets used to the heat. And so just a little change in temperature makes you really cold. So I did wear a coat for the winter seasons there, and it did come in handy. Raincoats are always nice, and rain boots, because you get rain up to your waist, so it's better to have the boots than nothing at all. And then also I would say when you do get sick, don't try to go out and be a good sport. It's better just stay in and feel better than go out, because I did do that, and it just made it a lot worse with the heat and stuff. And I got more sick than I needed to get. The first thing I was told there was don't ever get a haircut there, because they like the blonde hair, and so they'll cut off more than you want them to. So I would just advise not to get one. One monsoon, that's the one that got up to our waist and entered the doors of our apartment and everything. It was a lot of rain. They're these big black bugs that like attach to you, and they're actually really poisonous, and I didn't know that, but everyone freaks out when one gets on you, and they're huge, and they come in like swarms, like birds, and so those are huge. And then we saw sloths and alligators, and we saw a toucan, and some of those cool ones that you don't see here. So one of the most different foods, I would say, was liver. I had never tried it, and the way they cook it, they kind of like fry it like a hamburger, and so that was very different. And then my favorite food was probably the alligator. They fry it like chicken nuggets here, and so you can dip it in the sauces they have, and that was my favorite. Yeah, a crazy one that we had is one day we were with all of the sisters, and there was 6 of us that day, and it was on our P day, so we were just going to stores and, you know, souvenir shopping that day. And the police stopped us because there was 3 of us that were Americans and the rest were natives. And they stopped us and asked us for our passports, but the president keeps our passports, and so we didn't have them on hand. And so they picked us up in a police car, and there it was a police truck. So they threw us in the back of the truck, and we had to go down to the police station. And luckily, our president was on the phone with one of our other companions, and they asked the police if our companions could come with, and if a member could meet us there. And so a member met us there, and he was a lawyer, and so he was able to help us out. But it was a pretty weird situation because we didn't know what was happening as us Americans. We'd only been there for like a couple weeks, all of us had, and so it was pretty crazy to get in the back of a cop car and not know what was going to happen. I had a pretty hard companion. Like I've been saying, we had natives, and their views on mission life is a lot different than our views and what we're taught growing up. And most of them are converts. Some of them are like a couple months. They haven't been in it for a long time, and some have been in it for a while. And so it's hard to have the same values and the same thinking. And so it was hard for this one companion and me, it was hard to get on the right track and follow the rules and be exactly obedient like they ask us to be. Definitely relying totally on the Lord in all the decisions you make. It made it a lot easier when I got home and had to make life decisions, to know to trust in the Lord in all times. One of my experiences was with one of the converts we were teaching. She was about 12, 13, and her mom ran one of the orange shops that we went to and got oranges every once in a while. And one day she just asked us like what we were doing on our walking on the streets and what the name plaques were and stuff. And so we sat down and started talking to her and her mom. And she showed more interest than her mom, which is common there. But one of the most spiritual experiences was with her when we were teaching her about the Restoration, and we were telling her the story of Joseph Smith and how he got the Book of Mormon and was translating it, and she just like stopped us mid-sentence and was like, I know it's true. And we're like, how do you know it's true? Trying to get her to talk to us, and she just said, I don't know, but I just feel good when you talk, and I feel like I could do anything. And so I just, right there, it's the simple things that we tell people is great and profound in their minds. And after that, she wanted to know more and more, and she wasn't allowed to get baptized because her parents wouldn't allow it, but we still talk, and she tells me her spiritual experiences, and it's really awesome to see that she still believes in it. She didn't lose faith because her parents said no. She's still trying to be in the gospel, I guess. We were late. It was late one night, and on my mission, the curfew was 8:30 instead of 9 like it normally is. And so we were trying to get a ride home because it was a good 20 minutes walk, and we didn't have enough time to walk 20 minutes. And so we were trying to get a ride and calling members, and my companion was calling members, and we were on this street corner waiting for them to come get us, and across the way were these men, and they were hooting and hollering, catcalling, and we thought that they were intoxicated and that they just didn't know what they were doing. And so we were like, we need to get out of the situation. And I heard this voice like, you need to walk home, like don't even wait for them, just go now. And so we started walking, and they followed us for a while, and eventually our members found us and came and picked us up. But it was a scary experience, just them catcalling, and especially with Americans, it's normal. They've never seen that many, and so when you get together, they catcall her a lot more. But that was a cool experience because I was like, I heard the voice like, you need to get out, just walk, like don't even wait and stuff. And so that was kind of a testimony builder to just listen. Don't find out what would happen if you didn't type thing. So I would say best advice going to the mission is just teach with all your heart. You'll feel intimidated not knowing Spanish, and you'll feel like you can't say a lot because your companion knows so much and you know so little. But just say it. If it's wrong, then it's wrong. And some members may think it's funny, but it's better to say it and know what you did wrong than not say it at all, and maybe have gotten it right and changed somebody's testimony. And I know that the Lord is with you when you do try to speak Spanish, and that may be hard at first, but He'll help you to understand and to get the Spanish as you go. And I know that with a lot of situations it was hard to get out of that comfort zone, but do it because you'll regret it if you don't.